Well, hello. Welcome back to another Q&A. We're here with Jamie this morning to discuss his sermon on Sunday. And Jamie, before I ask you a few questions, would you mind giving us a recap for those who maybe haven't had a chance to listen?
Yeah, it's a passage from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 23 through chapter 11, 1. And what Paul is talking about is how we interact with one another, believers and non-believers. And what I said at the very beginning is because of sin having entered into this world, and because of our sinful hearts, we have a tendency to bring everything gravitating towards ourselves. We look at everything in terms of how it relates to us, what it means to us, and they even pointed out how in 1 Corinthians, how Paul is continually pointing out that how we view church leadership can gravitate towards ourselves, how we view sex, how we view marriage, how we view our spiritual gifts, how we view the Lord's Supper, and right here, and how even eating and drinking and how we relate to one another, how it can all gravitate towards ourselves. But the answer is looking to Christ, because Christ's answer is how we can swing to both ends of the pendulum, regardless of whether we're being legalistic, we're being a strict rule follower, trying to earn favor with God, or if we are not caring about what others think, what God thinks of us, that Christ is the answer to both of those extremes.
So I love the point or the description you made of how, God has created his creation for specific purposes that bring him glory. All right, he could have made oxygen come out of a board, but he's chosen trees and flowers and in different ways. How might me being mindful of creation glorifying God, I know it glorifies God, but what's kind of the indirect result it has with my relationship with work, my friends, my neighbors? How me just being mindful of how all creation cries out to the Lord helps with those relationships?
Yeah, I think that's one of it addresses one of the things that we have tried to focus on here, and with all the pandemic, we haven't had as much of a focus on it, but how our faith impacts our work. We often think that the only way in which we can do work that's pleasing to God is to come on staff at a church and do word-based ministry. But the fact of the matter is that all work is sacred. There's not a sacred and secular divide like what a lot of people believe. So with regards to someone being a teacher, we can see how their faith impacts their work, because a teacher is teaching truth, and we know that all truth is God's truth. We think about somebody who's an attorney. They're seeking justice, which is what God desires. He desires for justice to be executed. We even think about someone who's a musician. God is the one who's created sound, and it's through the musician's skill that he's able to take that God created sound and orchestrate in such a way where it makes beautiful music. And not only that, but it's also realizing that all men, women, and children, regardless of what their race is, what their age is, what their theological persuasion is, whether Christian or non-Christian, they're all created in God's image and to be respected, and there's inherent dignity with that we must keep in mind as we interact with them.
Yeah. I think that too, that transitions into how we might handle the great example you gave on Sunday about, let's say your neighbor invites you to come watch a movie, and then maybe it's a movie that isn't really appropriate, but you're stuck between, I don't want to offend my neighbor, I don't want to come off as legalistic, but at the same time, I don't want to promote it and be licentious about it. So how might you help someone who's trying to figure out that line, work through a situation like that?
Yeah, it's a really a sticky situation. There's not an easy answer, and it requires a lot of wisdom on this. But the way in which we would discern between a movie that's overtly sinful and one that isn't to be consumed. And then, even when we say one that really isn't overtly sinful, that it's truthful, it may not be something that someone would want to watch. In a way, the way I've had it explained to me is you look at some of the violent movies, some of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies where there's a lot of gratuitous sex, there's a lot of gratuitous violence and that sort of thing, where those things are being glorified. There's nothing redemptive about that. And again, this is going to lead to other questions, and I'm sure that maybe there may be some people emailing me or calling me about this. But those are the ones that I think that we need to stay away from. Where it gets into a matter of Christian liberty is you take a movie like Saving Private Ryan, which is a movie which is an accurate account of what it was like to storm the beaches of Normandy. I've talked to World War II veterans back right around when that came out, and they said it's a very accurate depiction of what took place, and it may not be something that you would want to stomach, but it's truthful. The violence and the language and everything that was in that is not done in an untruthful way. It's not glorifying it, and instead what it does, it brings a weight to us to see the brokenness of the world. So even though it's sad, even though it's very violent, there's something to be appreciated, and it's a great talking point with our non-Christian friends and Christian friends as well.
Well, thank you for your word on Sunday. As always, if you have any further questions about sermons or just questions you would like for us to address on this podcast, feel free to reach out. But thank you for listening.